The night air was thick and cold, cutting through the grand halls of the Korean Mafia mansion like a blade. Nia Lennox's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Sirens wailed outside, flashing red and blue lights against the manicured walls, and the world felt surreal, as if she had stepped into someone else's nightmare. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening," she shouted, struggling against the firm hands that gripped her arms. Her uniform, usually neat and pressed, was torn and stained from the chaos, her mop and bucket abandoned on the marble floor. She couldn't understand why she was being dragged out in handcuffs, why the police wouldn't explain anything, why everyone in the mansion was staring at her with suspicion and disgust. From the hallway, she caught a glimpse of him, the 38-year-old Korean Mafia CEO, tattoos dark against his crisp black suit, standing frozen in the dim light. His eyes were wide, not with anger, but confusion, disbelief, something softer. A flicker of doubt passed through him, but before he could move, Nia was already being shoved into the police car. "Nia, wait, please!" the 8-year-old boy screamed, his small fists punching the air as tears streamed down his cheeks. He was always brave, always clever for his age, but now his voice was raw with panic. Nia turned her head to see him pressed against the tall man's legs, begging for her to stay. She wanted to reach out, to tell him it wasn't true, that she hadn't done anything. But the cuffs were tight, her movements restricted, and the officers were already dragging her toward the street. Then she saw her, the mistress, the woman everyone admired, dressed in designer silk that shimmered even under the flashing lights. Her smile was cruel, slow, calculated. She raised a perfectly manicured hand, as if waving goodbye, as if this were a performance meant only for her amusement. Nia felt a surge of anger mixed with helplessness. She wanted to scream, to expose the truth, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. The world outside had become a blur. Flashing lights, shouting voices, the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "You're lying. I didn't do anything," Nia shouted one last time, but the words fell on deaf ears. The officers didn't flinch. The mistress didn't. The Mafia CEO, he still looked stunned, caught between disbelief and concern, but he said nothing. As the car door slammed shut, Nia's eyes met the boy's one last time. His small face was streaked with tears, his lips trembling, but there was a fire in his eyes, a spark of determination that made her chest tighten. Somehow, she knew, even in this nightmare, that he wouldn't let this end like this. The engine roared to life, and the city lights blurred past. Nia Lennox, the cleaner, the woman who had quietly held this household together, was now a prisoner, framed, jailed, and alone. But somewhere in the shadows of this twisted night, a seed of hope lingered, a seed that belonged to an 8-year-old boy who refused to accept injustice. And that was all Nia had for now. The mansion was enormous, more like a fortress than a home. Marble floors gleamed under golden chandeliers, and the scent of expensive perfumes lingered in the air. Every corner whispered wealth, power, and danger. And yet, Nia Lennox, the new cleaner, felt oddly at home. It had been a week since she started, and already, she had learned the rhythm of the house, the creak of the stairs before dawn, the soft thrum of the security systems, the faint laugh of the 8-year-old boy echoing through the hallways. He was mischievous, clever, and impossible to ignore. But he wasn't her only challenge. There was her boss, the Korean Mafia CEO. Sharp, intimidating, but kind. That kindness was dangerous in its own way. It made the mansion feel less like a prison and more like a place that could be safe, if only for a moment. He rarely raised his voice, rarely showed anger, but there was an authority in his every movement, a magnetic presence that made people obey without question. Tattoos peeked from his sleeves, dark ink crawling up his arms like stories no one dared to read. And yet, when he looked at Nia, there was something else. Curiosity, respect, perhaps even admiration. But Nia's true daily test was the mistress. She arrived like a storm, gliding through the halls in designer heels that clicked like thunder against the marble. Every hair, every stitch, every accessory screamed perfection, and every glance screamed contempt. "Clean this, now." The mistress snapped one morning, tossing a delicate silk scarf onto the floor as if it were garbage. Her voice was smooth but sharp, a knife wrapped in velvet. Naya bent down, picking up the scarf with her gloved hands, her lips curling into a sly smile. I would love to, but I was thinking maybe you'd like to try picking it up yourself. It might be good exercise, she said, straightening and meeting the mistress's icy gaze without flinching. The mistress froze, a flicker of anger passing across her face, but Naya didn't back down. That had been the first real confrontation, and from that day forward, their banters became a daily duel, witty, cutting, and, strangely, entertaining for anyone who watched. The 8-year-old boy adored Naya. He followed her around the mansion like a shadow, helping her with chores, mimicking her movements, laughing at her jokes. The mistress noticed it too. Every time she walked in and saw the boy laughing with Naya, her smile would tighten, her eyes narrowing in jealousy and irritation. Why is he always with you? The mistress asked one afternoon, her tone silky but venomous. Maybe because I don't bark orders at him like a queen demanding subjects, Naya replied smoothly, dusting a shelf while keeping her eyes on the mistress. The mistress's lips pressed into a thin line. Naya knew she had struck a nerve. She almost laughed, but the boy tugged at her apron, whispering, Don't get her too mad, Naya. You know she tries to ruin everything. Naya ruffled his hair, smiling. Don't worry, kid. I've got her number. Despite the tension, Naya loved the mansion. She moved silently through the halls, aware of every secret passage, every locked door, every hidden camera. She noticed the smallest details, the mistress's perfume changing slightly every day, the subtle way the CEO's hand twitched when he was stressed, the boy's quiet sighs when he was worried about his father. The mansion had its shadows, and Naya had quickly learned that in those shadows, power shifted in ways no one outside could imagine. The mistress might appear flawless and untouchable, but Naya could see the cracks, the arrogance that blinded her, the cruelty she hid behind elegance. One evening, Naya found herself in the grand kitchen, scrubbing floors while the boy sat perched on the counter, swinging his legs. Do you think he'll like me? He asked suddenly, his voice small. Naya paused, wiping her brow. Do you mean your dad? He nodded. He's scary sometimes, but he's nice too. Why are you nice to him? She smiled softly, thinking of the Mafia CEO standing alone in his office, papers spread before him, tattoos peeking from his cuffs. Because sometimes the people who look the scariest need someone to see the good in them, she said. The boy nodded thoughtfully, then grinned. I like you the best, even better than her. Naya laughed, a soft, genuine sound that echoed in the kitchen. I like you too, kid. You keep me on my toes. But even as she laughed, she felt the tension of the mansion pressing down. The mistress watching from the shadows, the secrets hidden in locked rooms, the silent eyes of the CEO following every movement. She knew life in this house would never be simple. Yet Naya Lennox, clever, bold, and unafraid, felt a thrill in the danger, a satisfaction in the small victories, and a strange warmth in the loyalty of an 8-year-old boy who trusted her more than anyone else. Little did she know, those very loyalties, those playful banters, and those small daily triumphs were about to be tested in ways she could never imagine. The mistress was planning something dark, something that would turn Naya's world upside down. And the boy, small and underestimated, would be at the center of it all. The mansion never slept. Even when the chandeliers dimmed and the city outside sank into quiet darkness, the halls echoed with whispers, some real, some imagined. Naya Lennox moved through them silently, her mop gliding across marble floors, her eyes sharp and observant. She had learned early on that in a house of wealth and power, every gesture, every glance, every word could hide danger. The boy, small but fearless, trailed behind her as usual. Naya, he whispered. She's watching us. Naya glanced toward the grand staircase, where the mistress's silhouette lingered for a moment before disappearing into the shadows. Her laugh was soft, measured, cruel, a sound that could freeze blood if you weren't careful. Naya smirked under her breath. She had faced arrogance before, but there was something dangerously calculated about this woman. Don't worry, kid, Naya whispered, leaning down so he could hear her over the soft hum of the refrigerator. I can handle her. He nodded solemnly, clutching his small hands together. You better. She's mean. Naya chuckled quietly. Mean is her job description. Let's just make sure we're smarter. The next morning, the mansion was buzzing with its usual rhythm. The boy getting ready for school. The CEO reviewing papers in his office. The staff moving like shadows across the polished floors. Naya was in the kitchen, scrubbing a stubborn stain on the floor when the mistress swept in. She wore a cream-colored dress, flawless, untouchable, and utterly infuriating. Naya, why isn't this floor spotless? She demanded, pointing at the very spot Naya had been scrubbing. Naya stood, smirking slightly, wiping her hands on a clean rag. It's spotless, ma'am. Maybe your eyes need cleaning instead. The mistress froze, one perfectly arched eyebrow rising. The words were sharp, audacious, a line Naya had learned early not to cross lightly. Yet the boy giggled from the doorway, and even the CEO, peeking over his papers, couldn't hide a faint smile. How dare you speak to me like that? The mistress hissed. I am your superior. Naya tilted her head, her tone calm but biting. Superior in arrogance, maybe, not in intelligence. The mistress's eyes flared, but before she could respond, the boy clapped his small hands and said, Leave her alone. Naya's not a problem. You are. The room went silent. The mistress's face paled slightly, and Naya stifled a laugh. The CEO's expression shifted, somewhere between alarm and amusement. Even in this world of wealth and danger, the boy had courage that was impossible to ignore. As the day wore on, the tension between Naya and the mistress grew sharper. Every order, every glance, every movement was a subtle game of power. Naya was clever enough to turn the mistress's arrogance against her, slipping under the radar, winning small victories with quiet banter and calculated smiles. But the mistress was no fool. She watched, studied, and waited. Naya could feel it, the careful precision in her movements, the way her eyes lingered too long on Naya's belongings, the way she subtly undermined every task. There was something brewing beneath her flawless exterior, a darkness that Naya sensed but could not yet name. That evening, as Naya cleaned the library, the boy crept up beside her. Naya, do you think she'll ever like you? Naya paused, setting down the duster. No, she said honestly, and that's fine. I don't need her to like me. I just need to survive her games. He frowned. She's scary though. I mean, you're so brave. Naya knelt down, looking him in the eyes. Brave isn't the absence of fear, kid. It's facing it, even when it's right in front of you. Remember that. He nodded solemnly, then smiled, a small but determined grin. Then we'll be brave together. The mansion seemed to hold its breath that night. Naya moved through the halls, her mind alert, senses sharpened. She noticed the mistress's favorite vase slightly askew, a drawer left open, the faint sound of a phone vibrating somewhere deep within the house. Small things easily missed, but in a place like this, small things mattered. Unbeknownst to Naya, the mistress had begun laying her plans. Every gesture, every word, every subtle jab had a purpose. She was clever, patient, and ruthless. A storm disguised in silk and perfume. And soon, that storm would strike, testing Naya's courage, the boy's loyalty, and the fragile trust in the mansion's walls. But for now, the quiet moments remained. Naya laughed softly with the boy, exchanged sharp banters with the mistress, and cleaned every corner of the grand home with meticulous care. And somewhere, in the shadows, the mistress's eyes followed, calculating, waiting, and already plotting the moment when all would change. The mansion was quieter than usual that night. Even the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed muffled, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Naya Lennox moved carefully through the halls, her mop tucked under her arm, her senses alert. She had learned that, in a place like this, silence was often more dangerous than noise. The boy had gone to bed hours ago, but she had lingered in the grand living room, tidying and arranging the scattered magazines and papers left by the CEO. He worked long hours and trusted the household staff to maintain order. Naya had become more than a cleaner, at least in the boy's eyes. A faint creak of the stairs caught her attention. She froze, listening. Footsteps, deliberate and light, moving with the precision of someone used to navigating the mansion without drawing attention. Her first thought was the CEO, checking on the house. But then she noticed the soft click of heels. Unmistakable. The mistress. Naya ducked behind the velvet armchair just as the mistress glided into the hall, a small black clutch in hand. Her eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, as if measuring every corner, every shadow. Naya held her breath, watching the subtle, elegant movements that masked something far darker beneath the surface. The mistress stopped at the base of the staircase, pressed her phone to her ear, and whispered, "Everything is ready. He won't suspect a thing. By morning, it'll be done." Naya's stomach tightened. There was no mistaking the tone. This was no ordinary conversation. The words were too precise, too careful, a plan unfolding in real time. Minutes stretched into eternity. Naya stayed hidden, heart pounding, mind racing. She could see the mistress moving with deliberate steps toward the CEO's private office. A room Naya had never been allowed to enter. Every instinct screamed that something dangerous was about to happen. Something that could change the mansion forever. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with activity. Naya went about her chores, sweeping, dusting, and polishing with her usual meticulous care. But an unusual tension hung in the air. Staff whispered in hushed tones, glancing nervously at the mistress, who moved like a predator through the halls, her elegance sharp and precise. "Everything seems normal," she said softly to herself, her lips curling into a slight, cruel smile. "Just the way it should be." Naya noticed small signs too. A drawer slightly ajar where it shouldn't be, a faint scuff on the marble floor near the office, and the subtle shift in the boy's behavior. He had noticed it too. Sitting on the counter as she polished the kitchen tiles, he leaned over. "Something's wrong, Naya," he whispered, frowning. "I can feel it. She's planning something." Naya looked at him, impressed by his perceptiveness. "I know, kid. I can feel it too. But we need to be careful. One wrong move and it could all fall apart." The mistress, meanwhile, was playing her role perfectly. To the CEO, she smiled, charming and flawless, appearing entirely innocent and devoted. She spoke of business, of her social engagements, of trivial things, all while laying the groundwork for a deception so meticulous it could fool anyone. By mid-afternoon, subtle chaos began to creep in. Papers misplaced, doors slightly ajar, the faint glint of gold, or was it a reflection? Naya noticed it first, her sharp eyes catching the smallest discrepancies. She moved carefully, noting every detail, every irregularity. That evening, the boy crept into her room as she prepared the last of the day's cleaning supplies. His small eyes were wide, alert. "Naya, I think she's going to do it tonight," he whispered. "She's going to take something big." Naya's jaw tightened. "I know, but remember what I told you, brave isn't the absence of fear. Brave is facing it. We'll be ready whatever happens." The night descended like a velvet curtain over the mansion. The chandeliers glowed softly, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Every creak of the stairs, every flicker of the lights, every subtle movement could mean danger. Naya moved like a shadow herself, alert, cautious, prepared. From her vantage point, she watched the mistress glide through the hallways, her heels clicking softly, a quiet symphony of elegance hiding something far more sinister. Naya couldn't see what exactly was happening yet, but she sensed the shift, the calm before a storm, the precise unfolding of a plan designed to destroy, to deceive, to manipulate. And though the boy was asleep upstairs, unaware of the exact danger, Naya felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had become more than a cleaner. She had become a guardian, a protector, someone who must face the darkness even when the odds were stacked against her. Little did she know, the mistress's plan would strike faster and harder than anyone expected. And soon, Naya Lennox would find herself facing a nightmare she had never imagined. Framed, accused, and alone. But even in the shadows, hope lingered. The boy, clever and brave beyond his years, was not far away. And Naya, sharp, quick, and fearless, was not one to be easily defeated. The mansion held its breath. The stage was set, and the storm was coming. The night had fallen like a heavy curtain over the mansion. Shadows stretched long and dark across the polished floors, and the chandeliers glimmered faintly, casting golden light that only highlighted the tension simmering in every corner. Nia Lennox moved silently through the halls, her heart beating in cautious rhythm. Something felt off. She could sense it. The subtle shift in the air, the faint unease that prickled her skin. She paused near the grand staircase, noticing the mistress's faint silhouette slipping toward the office. Her heels clicked softly, measured, like the ticking of a clock counting down to disaster. Nia's instincts screamed at her. Danger was close, and whatever was about to happen, it would change everything. The boy, now awake, watched from the doorway of his room. His small eyes were sharp and alert. "Nia, be careful," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. "I always am," Nia replied, her tone calm, hiding the rising fear in her chest. She had faced arrogance and cruelty before, but there was something about tonight that felt different. Deliberate, cold, and dangerous. The mistress moved with flawless precision, slipping into the CEO's private office. Nia, hidden behind a velvet curtain, could see the glimmer of gold through the slight crack in the door. Her heart tightened. The mistress wasn't just scheming. She was stealing. Something valuable. Something far beyond Nia's understanding at the moment. Before Nia could react, the mistress's phone rang softly. She lifted it gracefully, whispering a single sentence. "It's done." And just like that, the stage shifted. The mansion erupted in chaos moments later. Alarms blared faintly, staff rushed to investigate, and the CEO appeared in the hallway, his expression unreadable but tense. Then came the accusation. Nia was pulled from her hiding place before she could even comprehend what was happening. The mistress, flawless and venomous, stood nearby, pointing at her with cold precision. "She did it. She stole the gold," she announced, her voice dripping with false innocence. Nia froze, disbelief locking her in place. "What? No, that's not true. I didn't touch anything," she shouted. But her words fell on deaf ears. The staff whispered, the CEO's eyes widened with confusion, and the boy's small cries echoed through the hallway. "Please, you have to believe me," Nia pleaded, struggling as security moved in. Her wrists were cuffed tightly, her body pushed toward the waiting car outside. She caught a final glimpse of the mistress, smiling ever so slightly, satisfaction glinting in her eyes. The boy ran to her side, tears streaking his cheeks. "Nia, stop. You didn't do it." His small hands banged against the car window as she was shoved inside. Nia pressed her hands against the glass, meeting his gaze, and in that instant, a promise passed silently between them. This wasn't over. The drive to the station was a blur of flashing lights, sirens, and questions Nia couldn't answer. She was processed quickly, thrown into a cold cell, and left to face the world she had only just begun to understand. Framed, jailed, and alone, the mansion felt a lifetime away. In the darkness of her cell, Nia thought of the boy, his determination, his cleverness, the small ways he had helped her navigate the mansion. They were her anchor. If anyone could help her prove the truth, it would be him. The mistress, meanwhile, returned to the mansion, flawless as ever. She moved like a shadow of perfection, her presence cold and precise. Everything had gone according to plan, or so she thought. Back in the cell, Nia's thoughts raced. How had this happened so fast? How could someone so calculating frame her so perfectly? And most importantly, how would she survive this? Outside, the boy plotted. Even at 8 years old, he was clever and unafraid. He had watched the mistress, noticed her patterns, memorized her actions. And now, he realized he might be the only one who could save Nia from the nightmare she had been thrust into. The mansion, the mistress, the CEO, everything hung in a fragile balance. Nia, clever, bold, and unyielding, faced her darkest night. But even in that darkness, a spark of hope remained, burning bright with the promise of justice, loyalty, and revenge. As she lay on the hard bench of her cell, Nia whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. Not for me. Not for him. Not for the boy." And somewhere, deep within the mansion, the first cracks in the mistress's perfect plan were beginning to form, though no one would see them until it was far too late. The The streets outside the station were quiet, drenched in the soft glow of streetlights that reflected off puddles from an earlier rain. Inside the cell, Nia Lennox sat on the cold bench, her wrists still aching from the tight cuffs, her thoughts a whirlwind. How had the mistress framed her so perfectly? How had everything spiraled out of control so quickly? But while Nia wrestled with despair, miles away in the mansion, a small figure moved with determination. The 8-year-old boy, his heart pounding, refused to accept that the world had betrayed the one person he cared for most. He crept through the corridors, small and silent, memorizing every camera, every guard, every servant's routine. His small hands clutched a notepad he had found in the study, where he had scribbled codes, clues, and observations. Small things no adult would notice. The mistress might have fooled everyone else, but she had underestimated one critical thing: the boy's intelligence and his unwavering loyalty to Nia. He began piecing together the puzzle. He remembered the faint glint of gold he had glimpsed, the mistress's phone call at night, the way she had moved through the hallways with measured precision. She's hiding something. She can't be trusted, he whispered to himself, tracing the routes she had taken, marking where he had seen suspicious activity. His plan was simple but risky. He would gather evidence, expose the mistress, and clear Nia's name. But every step was a dangerous game. One misstep and he could be caught, just like Nia. Late that night, he slipped into the mistress's study while the house slept. His small frame allowed him to move unnoticed. The mistress's belongings were arranged perfectly, but small details gave her away. A receipt for a safety deposit box, a faintly open drawer containing papers he shouldn't have seen, a faint glimmer of something that didn't belong. He quickly snapped photos with the small camera he had taken from the boy's toy box, a tool his clever mind had converted into a secret weapon. Every click of the shutter felt like a heartbeat in the silent night, capturing the proof Nia needed, the proof the adults would never find without his courage. Back in the cell, Nia had sensed the shift. Something was stirring outside, an energy, a glimmer of hope. Her thoughts turned to the boy, her small ally in this dangerous game. She knew that, somehow, he would try, and if anyone could navigate the darkness of the mansion, it was him. The next day, the mistress strutted through the mansion as usual, flawless and smug. She assumed her plan had worked perfectly, that Nia would remain behind bars, powerless, forgotten. But she didn't count on the boy. He moved with purpose, leaving subtle hints, small pieces of evidence that would eventually catch the CEO's attention. He watched from shadows as she ordered the staff, spoke with charm to the CEO, and smiled with calculated arrogance. Every gesture was meticulously analyzed, every word catalogued in his mind. He remembered everything Nia had taught him: how to notice details, how to anticipate danger, how to stay calm under pressure. Hours later, he finally found a safe moment to act. The boy crept into the office and managed to record a conversation between the mistress and one of her accomplices. Her words dripped with the kind of cruelty and deceit that no adult would believe immediately. But the boy captured every syllable, every hesitation, every lie. As he hid the recordings in a secure place, he whispered to himself, "Hang on, Nia. I'm not letting her win. You're coming home." Meanwhile, Nia endured the cold cell, her mind racing. She had survived tough situations before, but this felt different. She had been betrayed, framed, and judged without explanation. Yet, a spark of hope burned inside her. A small, clever boy she trusted implicitly, working tirelessly to bring her back. Days passed. The boy continued his clandestine operations, sneaking through the mansion, observing, recording, and planning. He was small, underestimated, and invisible to the adults, which made him the perfect secret weapon. Each night, he returned to his room exhausted, but determined, knowing that one mistake could ruin everything. Then, finally, a breakthrough. He discovered a hidden compartment in the mistress's study, containing irrefutable evidence, receipts, ledgers, and proof of her scheming. His small hands trembled as he carefully gathered everything, ensuring it was safe, hidden, and ready for the right moment. He smiled to himself, a mixture of triumph and relief. "You didn't know who you were messing with," he whispered to the shadows. "Nia Lennox isn't alone, and I'm not letting anyone hurt her." Far away, behind cold iron bars, Nia felt it. A shift, a subtle disturbance in the world she had thought had abandoned her. Somewhere out there, someone was fighting for her, someone small but brilliant, someone loyal beyond measure. And in that moment, Naya knew she wasn't defeated. Not yet. The mistress, still smiling in her perfection, had no idea what was coming. She had underestimated a boy whose courage outshone her cunning. And soon, the truth would begin to unravel, brick by brick, revealing everything she had tried to hide. The mansion, the deceit, the danger. It all hung on a knife's edge. But one thing was certain. Naya Lennox would not stay silent forever. And the boy who loved her was ready to risk everything to set things right. The mansion had never felt so tense. Even the chandeliers seemed to flicker with unease, casting long shadows that stretched like silent witnesses across the marble floors. The CEO, the 38-year-old Korean man with tattoos that told a story of power and pain, sat in his office, a cold cup of coffee untouched on his desk. His normally sharp eyes, accustomed to reading people and situations, were clouded with doubt. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure who to trust. The mistress had played her role perfectly for weeks. Flawless, charming, loyal to him in public. Yet something about her confidence, her calm, and the little inconsistencies gnawed at him. Receipts misplaced, phone calls that didn't add up, subtle whispers from the staff. Little details he had ignored at first were now forming a pattern he couldn't ignore. He picked up the file on Naya Lennox, the woman he had hired to help around the mansion. A woman he barely knew but had begun to respect in the small ways she had managed the chaos of the house. The accusations against her seemed airtight on paper, but something about the story didn't sit right. He could see it in her face, even from the security footage. Shock, fear, confusion, not guilt. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the mansion, the boy had been busy. Clever beyond his years, he had begun planting subtle clues. Evidence he had gathered from the mistress's hidden compartments, recordings of whispered conversations, inconsistencies in her accounts. Each piece was small, almost invisible, but together they formed a map, a trail that could lead the CEO to the truth. That evening, the CEO summoned the mistress to his office under the guise of a routine discussion. She arrived like a flawless vision, poised, smiling, radiating calm and perfection. He watched her carefully, noting the tiniest twitch in her fingers, the slight hesitation in her smile, the almost imperceptible tension in her voice. "Everything is in order," she said smoothly, her voice like silk, hiding the knife beneath. "The situation with the cleaner handled." The CEO leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Is it?" His tone was soft, but every word carried weight. "I've noticed discrepancies. Receipts don't add up. Reports are inconsistent. Staff are uneasy. Are you certain everything is handled?" Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered ever so slightly. Of course, Naya Lennox was unfortunate, but the matter is closed. She won't be a problem. Something in his chest tightened. He had known her for a long time, trusted her instincts. But now, instinct screamed at him that she was lying. The confidence she projected was too polished, too controlled. It didn't match the small chaos that had been following her steps like a shadow. In the hallway, the boy peered through the slightly open office door, holding a folder of evidence in his small hands. Every detail he had collected, the mistress's hidden ledgers, her whispered phone calls, her subtle movements, could now reach the CEO. He knew he had to be brave, and he knew this moment could change everything. The CEO's gaze sharpened. "Tell me everything," he said slowly, his voice low, dangerous. "Every detail. Leave nothing out." The mistress's lips pressed into a thin line, a flicker of panic betraying her otherwise perfect composure. She knew she had been meticulous, clever, flawless in her deception. Yet the CEO's eyes were no longer blind. Something in his aura, something in the air, signaled that her web was beginning to unravel. In that moment, Naya's name hung in the air like a whispered promise of justice. She had been framed, jailed, made to suffer in a system that didn't understand her. Yet the truth was beginning to pierce through the carefully constructed illusion. The boy, sensing the shift, slipped the folder into the CEO's hands. "You need to see this," he whispered, barely audible. "She's lying. She's the one who..." She's the one who did it. The CEO's eyes scanned the evidence, a slow burn of realization crossing his face. Each photo, each note, each recording unraveled the mistress's narrative, exposing the truth hidden beneath layers of charm and deception. His jaw tightened, and for the first time the mansion, the perfect house of wealth and shadows, felt fragile, vulnerable. The mistress, sensing the tide turning, attempted to recover her composure, her voice smooth but tense. I assure you everything is as it seems. Nia Lennox. The CEO's hand slammed onto the desk, papers rattling. No, this ends tonight. His eyes burned with a rare intensity, and the mistress froze. She had been untouchable for so long, but now the balance had shifted. The boy's clever actions had set in motion a chain of events she had not anticipated. A chain that would bring the truth to light. Down the hall, Nia sat in her cold cell, unaware that the first seeds of her freedom were being planted. She sensed a change, a subtle shift in the air, the kind of shift that comes before the storm breaks. And somewhere in the mansion, the mistress realized, for the first time, that perfection could fail, that cunning could be outsmarted, and that the smallest, cleverest person in the house had become her most dangerous enemy. The mansion was alive with tension. Shadows lengthened. Secrets hung in the air like dust motes in the golden light. And the truth, long buried beneath lies, arrogance, and deceit, was finally beginning to rise. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the barred window of the cold cell, painting Nia Lennox's face with a pale, almost haunting glow. 3 months. 3 long, suffocating months of injustice, confusion, and frustration. The air had been thick with despair, but in the back of her mind, a small spark of hope had never died. The boy. She didn't know how, but she felt that somehow he had not given up on her. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The cell door creaked open. Nia's head lifted sharply, her eyes scanning for danger. Then she saw him, the CEO, his expression unreadable. A stack of documents in one hand and the boy perched on his shoulder, like a triumphant, tiny warrior. Nia, he said softly, almost cautiously. It's time. Nia's breath caught. I don't understand. He handed her the folder the boy had secretly compiled, photos, recordings, ledgers, notes, irrefutable evidence of the mistress's deceit. Every moment, every lie, every subtle betrayal had been documented by the clever little boy who refused to stay silent. She did this, the CEO said, his voice calm but edged with steel. And we have proof. You were framed. Everything points to her. Nia's hands trembled as she reviewed the documents, the tension and anxiety of the past months slowly dissolving into disbelief, relief, and fury. I can't believe this, she whispered. Believe it, the CEO said firmly. And believe this, nothing will be the same again. The boy climbed down and grinned up at her. Told you I'd save you, he said, his small chest puffed with pride. Nia laughed softly, tears brimming in her eyes. You're incredible, kid. I don't know what I'd do without you. Meanwhile, in the mansion, the mistress had sensed the shift. Her carefully constructed world was cracking. Her phone rang endlessly. Staff were being questioned, and the CEO's piercing eyes now scrutinized every move she made. Her confidence, once untouchable, faltered. When she was finally confronted in the grand office, the evidence laid bare before her, her composure wavered. This is impossible, she whispered, her voice trembling. The CEO's voice was ice cold. Impossible? Perhaps for you, but the truth doesn't lie. Nia entered the room, her presence calm but undeniably commanding. You framed me, she said, her voice steady, every word precise. You stole, lied, and betrayed. And now your game is over. The mistress's face went pale. All her elegance, all her arrogance, melted under the weight of the truth. How? She stammered. But Nia didn't give her the satisfaction of fear. The boy stepped forward. You didn't think I'd notice, did you? His small voice rang with authority beyond his years. You didn't think someone this little could see everything. The CEO's expression softened slightly as he glanced at Nia. Are you all right? He asked, his eyes searching hers. Nia nodded. I'm fine. Thanks to him. and you finally seeing the truth. The mistress was taken away, her plans exposed, her arrogance shattered. The mansion's balance had shifted entirely. The CEO returned to his office, but the mansion now felt different, lighter, freer, no longer bound by the mistress's toxic influence. Outside, Naya breathed deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs. Freedom tasted sweeter than she had ever imagined. The boy ran up to her, his small hand clasped in hers. "We did it," he said, grinning. Naya smiled, ruffling his hair. "We did. Together." The CEO approached, his sharp gaze now tempered with respect and something warmer, something unspoken. "Naya, I owe you more than I can ever say. You stayed strong when no one else believed in you." She shook her head, a playful glint in her eyes. "I had a great team," she said, nodding at the boy. The mansion, once a place of tension, fear, and betrayal, now felt alive with possibility. Shadows that had loomed for months began to fade. Naya, clever, resilient, and fearless, had faced betrayal, survived the darkest nights, and emerged stronger. The boy, brilliant beyond his years, had proven that courage and loyalty could outmatch deceit and arrogance. And the CEO, who had once doubted and judged, now understood the true value of trust, loyalty, and those underestimated by the world. As Naya stepped into the sunlight, she felt the weight of the past months lift. Her life was hers again, bold, unbroken, and filled with possibility. And in that moment, she knew something else too, that no matter what challenges came next, she and the boy, the clever little warrior who had saved her, would face them together. The mistress, her lies exposed, was a lesson in arrogance and cruelty. Naya Lennox, once a cleaner in a mansion of shadows, had emerged victorious, unbroken, fearless, and unforgettable. And somewhere, the mansion whispered its approval, golden light spilling across marble floors as if celebrating the truth finally revealed.
Hello besties, in this story we learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. Naya and the boy both faced danger and betrayal, yet they act bravely despite being afraid. True courage is taking action even when the odds are against you. The boy's cleverness and unwavering loyalty ultimately saved Naya. Even small, underestimated people can make a huge difference when they are observant, smart, and determined. Naya's journey shows that even when the world seems unfair and harsh, staying strong, smart, and true to yourself allows you to overcome even the darkest situations. Besties, bravery, loyalty, and truth are stronger than deceit, arrogance, and power. Even the smallest allies can change your fate. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.